The Wind is My Mother, Bearheart, Molly Larkin. Chapter 7. Another Kind of Healing. There's a good story from a Navajo people of years ago. Today it seems that every Navajo has a pickup to drive around the reservation, but in earlier times they used to get around in wagons pulled by small horses known as Indian ponies. They'd ride for miles to get water and haul it to their hogan and more miles to the trading post and back. One old Navajo rode a long distance to go to the trading post. Since the post didn't have much exposure to traffic, the owner really liked to talk when he got a customer. They were talking as the Navajo brought his groceries to the counter, and they talked as the trading post man was sacking the groceries. As the Navajo paid him, the man was still sacking and talking. The Navajo finally made the long trip home, and he unpacked his groceries. He discovered that the money he'd given to the trading post man was there in one of the sacks. Earlier the next morning, when the trading post man was about to open up, he found this Navajo waiting for him. The Navajo handed him the money, and the man asks, "Where was it?" "It was in my sack." "Thank you, Chief. I sure appreciate this. I want to know I really and truly appreciate it. But I'm curious. Why did you bring it back to me?" The Navajo pointed to his chest. "In here. I got 2 little men in here. One's good, but the other one's sure bad. He's a bad little man. The bad one said, 'Keep it.' The good one said, 'It's not right.' The bad one said, 'He won't miss it.' The good one said, 'It doesn't belong to you.' They argued all night last night. Tonight, I want to get some sleep." We don't label such things as conscience, but our elders taught us that there are different personalities within us that manifest at various times. Humor can be a powerful way of teaching also. We're going to remember something that we laugh about, and I guess that's why many of our teachings had some humor in them. Sometimes our elders would paint word pictures to make things ridiculous when they taught, and even when they counseled people. Just a few years ago, I tried that with a lady who claimed to be suicidal. She called me up one winter day in New Mexico and said, "I'm contemplating suicide." I know her well enough to get by with this. I told her, "As long as you're contemplating suicide, go ahead and contemplate. But don't commit it, because look outside. There's a blizzard going on. The ground's frozen. Talk about digging a grave. You wouldn't want us to go out there and have to dig a grave for you in this cold weather, would you?" I just kept going on and on about how ridiculous it would be to die at that particular time. She started chuckling and said, "Oh heck, what's the use?" and slammed the phone down. But she didn't commit suicide, and she's living a good life today. There are all kinds of ways to handle life situations. Sometimes people need encouragement. Sometimes they need shock treatment. There are times when people need to laugh and times they need to cry, and you have to know which is called for when you're counseling someone. To make people laugh, they say that's medicine too. And now in modern psychiatry, they're going to do the same thing. When you make people laugh, they've forgotten their troubles momentarily, and it's kind of like a shot in the arm. The healing arts are not only a matter of learning to use the chants and herbs, they also entail learning how to pinpoint certain areas that a person is dealing with emotionally. Something that's really troubling their mind. To learn about life, to learn about people, you never get through. You're always learning. You think you know all about a subject, and then something may be pointed out to you by a child that makes you aware of what you've been overlooking. What really qualifies a person to study the medicine ways and heal not only physically, but counsel with people. How do you counsel with people? When I was still living in Oklahoma, I knew a man who was leaving to do missionary work with the Navajos. His station wagon was all packed and his family was in there, ready to take off, when he asked me, "What can you tell me about the Navajos? I know you go out there a lot. What can you tell me about them that will be real useful to me?" "You ready to leave now?" "Yeah, I'm leaving in about 3 or 4 minutes." "You want me to tell you what would be helpful to you in your missionary work in 3 minutes' time?" "Yeah, can you?" "Yes. I can tell you, first of all, capitalize on which you have in common with the Navajo people." "I may have something in common with the Navajo?" "Yes. What?" "Well, you're a human being, and last time I checked, they're human beings too." "You have that in common? You're going to be preaching to them 30 or 40 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't know how long-winded you are, and in that length of time, the old people in the Navajo tribe are going to be watching you, and they're going to know all about you. They're going to take you apart and put you back together. They'll know more about you than you'll know about them. So if you promise them something, you be sure to fulfill that promise. Treat them as fellow human beings, not as a great preacher looking down on those poor souls, but on the same level as a human being. That's all I can tell you." On another occasion, a man came to me and said, "Say, I've been called to preach." "Wonderful. Who called you?" "God." "Why, that's even more wonderful if he called you. So when are you going to start preaching?" "That's what I wanted to see you about. I need some seminary training. At least 2 years. But my daughter's graduating this year, and next year my son graduates. Meanwhile, I'm working at a service station, barely making ends meet." I said, Wait. Before you go any farther, I know exactly what you can do." "What?" "Go back and tell the one who called you about all these problems. Maybe he didn't know about them when he called you. So you tell him." You may ask, what kind of counseling is that? If he's genuinely called by God to be a preacher, there will be a way provided. But if he's having doubts now, what is he going to do in the name of the missionary if he goes wrong later on? I didn't tell him all that. I don't always go into detail and explain a lot of things. I merely pinpoint something they ought to think about. God is forgiveness. I took a graduate class in psychology for 3.5 years. I needed just another half year to get a degree, but I only took the courses I wanted to take and then I left. I did that mostly to compare Western psychology with my teacher's approach to that. Should my practice extend beyond our own people to non-Indians, I would be able to speak in a language that they would understand. I'm an adjunct consultant at the Psychiatric Memorial Hospital in Albuquerque, and in certain situations at the hospital, I work with the patients. One was a nun who left the convent because she fell in love. She wanted to get married and lead a family life rather than follow the ways of the order. When she left the convent, her priest told her, "You will never be forgiven. You will go straight to hell." That seed was planted there, and it germinated until she got to the point where she thought she was possessed by the devil. I have to work with her intensely to redirect her line of thinking, to believe in the greatness of God's power, of how God must be thought of not just as God of love, but also as God of forgiveness, and that He has the power to dispel the dark forces that seemingly enter us. I told her the story of Jesus being confronted by a man who lived among the tombs, shrieking all day and night and cutting himself with stones. They tried to chain him, but he would break the chains, and people hated to go near him. Jesus went over to him to cast the demons out of him. I told her that power has never lessened. It's still in force if you're willing to believe. Love and forgiveness are synonymous. There's hardly any division at all. God likes to forgive. When we say God is love, we can also say God is forgiveness. It means the same thing. You can't truly forgive unless you really love. You can't truly love unless you can truly forgive. That's how the matter stands. She finally understood And I told her, the priest is only a human being. He's meant to interpret God's love, but as human beings, we can all make mistakes. It's not my place to say he made a mistake, but he misinterpreted something to cause you to think this way. The devil is very, very powerful. He sees even more powerful when we're too weak to stand up to him. But we have something at our command that can stand up to him, and that is God himself, the Creator. He can stand up to the darkness if you will allow him to. Out of your love of life and the love of your life you wish to make a home with, you want to be all right. So ask God's help to take care of the situation for you. Then we prayed, and I cedared her off by fanning her with my eagle feather and cedar smoke. After a while, she got her thinking turned around, and now she's happily married and has 2 children. According to the professional ethics, a minister doesn't go into the field of an attorney, and a doctor doesn't go into the field of the spiritual. That's the minister's realm. But in my case, I can go in any direction. That's why I'm kind of a handy thing to have around a hospital. Looking at the whole. There are 2 types of thinking, spatial and linear. Neither one is any better than the other, it's just how you happen to think. In linear thinking, you take one item, then keep adding other items to it until they build up to a whole. But in spatial thinking, you take the whole and then see how it became whole by filling in individual units. I was once giving a workshop at a center that had a very good cook, and on the last day we had a ceremony during which one of our group publicly praised this man for his cooking. I would call that linear, singling out one member of a family. Immediately I said, yes, I agree. We did enjoy the food very much, but the inspiration the cook would love comes from your home, from your wife and children who support you. Even though they may not be with you in this kitchen, they're cooking with you because of the love that you share in your home. That's special. Acknowledging the whole family, not just one member of the family. Our elders always seemed to look at the complete whole, whether they were treating someone for a physical illness or emotional problems. They looked at the overall picture, then determined what was out of balance within the whole, and they were more or less able to pinpoint where the trouble spots were. It wasn't until the medicine people who understood this, but any elder could evaluate so he or she might be able to help another person. They can be very blunt, saying, "Did this ever happen to you?" Or if the person seems real sensitive, then they would begin telling them, "I knew of a person who had a situation where this happened to them early in life, and this is how it affected them." It's a way of communicating among my people that ensures a person will get the message without getting defensive and resenting what you have said. As an example, suppose I'm sitting in a circle with a group of people, and among them is my nephew Robert, and he has done something that I didn't approve of. Let's say he had started drinking heavily. Also in this circle is another nephew, Walter, who hasn't done anything bad to my knowledge, but for Robert's benefit, I'm going to say, "Walter, nephew, I'm going to tell you about a few things. Should there ever come a time when you're feeling sort of down and you're looking to liquor to give you some comfort, I want you to think twice about it. I knew a man who had a lot of stress in his job because his boss was really hard on him. As a result, he started drinking every night as soon as he got home. Next thing, he took a drink in the morning to fortify himself before he went to work. Then at lunch also. After a while, the company fired his boss. He would have been next in line to take his place, but because of his drinking, they fired him too. Since he couldn't support his family anymore, his wife took the children and moved in with her parents. Now he's all alone and in a real sorry state. So if you ever find yourself in that position, think about these things I've told you about what can come from trying to drink away your troubles." Those who've been around our tribe long enough would know that he's telling someone off in here, but they wouldn't say anything because in our tribe we don't talk back to our elders. We don't argue with them or question your judgment. We just sit there and take it all in. Meanwhile, Robert begins to fidget. I'm doing that very thing. Gosh, I'll know better next time. That's a form of teaching in our way, saying it indirectly, because if I address him directly, Robert may not say anything to me verbally, but he'll be getting mad, and when he gets mad, that's a distraction from what I'm trying to implant in his mind. So I shift it over somewhere else, and he can take everything in and retain it. That's one way we counsel. Releasing and relinquishing. Many things happen early in life that affect our behavior, attitude, and thinking, and our elders were aware of all these things. If a person's life seemed haphazard, seeming to have no true direction, they'd ask, what's wrong with this person? Didn't he have any training at all? Any kind of teaching? Or they might ask, early in life, what kind of a relationship was there between the father and mother and child? Was there a domineering father or a father who was tolerant and understanding? Was he interested in that child did in school? Was he interested in what that child did in school, or did he say yeah and go on to other things? Did the child have a nurturing mother who was always a haven from the cares of his little world? Or was the mother intolerant, overbearing, abrupt? They go from there, putting in the various units, and if one doesn't seem to fit, they know that maybe this person has had an experience early in life that still bothers him and needs to be taken care of. There are many things that happen to us in our early life that stay with us. A little child is all alone in a room full of toys. His parents look in every once in a while to make sure the child's not getting into trouble. Then they go back to their soap or whatever they're watching, too busy to really be with the child. But the child knocks over a lamp and breaks it. The parent comes in there yelling and screaming. That's the first direct interaction they have with the child. Such lack of interactions is what's known as abandonment. The child is ignored until something negative happens, reinforcing the idea that to get any attention or love, the child has to be bad. The parents never say, that's good, you're being good, playing good. As the child grows, it is bored in him that he's bad. He wasn't born that way, he's learning it. Perhaps I really am bad. That's the beginning of low self-esteem we often hear about, but many fail to see how it begins. They're all forms of abuse of children, sexual, physical, psychological, but the most basic, the most common, is abandonment. Or maybe early in life you really wanted something so very dearly you'd just do almost anything to get it. Maybe you thought that if you were really extra good, you might be able to get it. If you were really good and didn't get it, you were just good for nothing, and that disappointment stayed with you. Years later, when you experience something similar to this event, you go to pieces. You don't know why you react the way you do, but it's something that happened a long time ago that makes you feel so bad. You're still holding on to it, much like a monkey holds on to a banana. A witch doctor from South Africa told me how they catch monkeys there. They bore a hole in a pumpkin large enough to slip in a banana. Then they reach through the hole with a spoon, clean out the inside, and drop in the banana. When the monkey comes around, he smells the banana inside the pumpkin, sticks his little forearm in there, feels around, grabs hold of that banana, and then he's stuck. His brain will not tell him that to free his hand, he's got to release that banana. He just holds on. That's the way of a lot of human beings today. Holding on to that banana for years. You haven't let go of your old hurts and disappointments. There are many things that happen in your life that you should have gotten rid of, but you're still holding on to them. You still have a big dialogue going on. No wonder you have wild dreams at night. It looks like a kaleidoscope going through your mind because you hold on to so many things that you should have let go of a long time ago. Now what happens? You're given a choice. When you hold on to that banana, a choice. Either to let go or to blame that stupid old pumpkin. If it wasn't for that pumpkin, I'd be out of here free. Blame started when Adam was created along with his helpmate Eve. You know the story. The Creator used to walk with them in the cool of the evening, but one evening they weren't around, so he started calling, "Adam, where art thou?" Adam wasn't around to say, "I'm right here." He was hiding. God already knew what happened, but he was putting them on the spot. They had to answer for their actions. What happened here? Adam began to blame God. "This woman you gave me. This woman you gave me. You're to blame." I guess they did something that was natural to do, but apparently it wasn't the right time for it. So the blaming started right there. We humans inherited that. We like to blame situations and people for our problems. But if I'm blaming other people, what am I doing? The word blame really means giving responsibility for. If I'm going to blame you for my misfortunes, I'm turning all of my emotions over to you and saying, "Here, you take care of them." But are you qualified to handle my emotions? They're my emotions. Why don't I handle them? It's easier to blame someone else. It's not too easy to look at yourself honestly, and that's why most of us still hold on to that banana for years and years. Let go once in a while. My people say never point a finger of scorn or judgment at your fellow man, because when you point, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. You might be 3 times worse than the one you're pointing at. So look at yourself first. That was our teaching. My people don't point anyway. We hate to point. The elders say if you point, your finger will grow crooked. There are many, many ways to let go of our bananas, so to speak. The way my people take care of something that we're not happy with is to honor it and say, "Thank you. You've taught me a lesson." If it's anger, if it's hate, if it's a drinking problem, boy, you've been with me for a long time. Now I'm going to try something else. But I want to thank you for teaching me something about myself. Never try to just get rid of it. You can't. It's too strong and it's too embedded. Instead, honor it and say thank you. My tribe has a drunk man dance to convey this message that we respect you as a great power, but would like for our people to do other constructive things. To honor your power and having taken hold of our people, we're going to create a dance just for you. We also have a ceremony for warriors returning from battle, or in modern times, the armed forces where they were exposed to much death and bloodshed. We say it weighs heavily on the mind when someone witnesses death. So this ceremony washes away the negative feelings and sense of loss. If you fill that space with something else, what you're doing is employing the laws of physics that says no 2 things can occupy the same space at the same time. So get it out and put something else in. If you've got a negative, put a positive in. They can't both be in the same place at the same time. Clean it all out. Many of our hurts and ills come from our thinking structures or attitudes. We've been hurt once, so we don't trust anybody because of it. Trust takes a lot of effort. But once you get to that point of trusting, then if the people you trust don't live up to their end, it's their problem, not yours. You trusted them and they let you down, then accept it and go on to others. If you say at that point of betrayal and hurt, you're not going to grow, move on to other vistas, other opportunities. I knew a man who was mad because he had loaned some money to someone he thought was a friend, and it was long past time when the friend should have paid it back. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Before you point a finger at him, let's consider this. You had the option to say no when he first asked you. So let's start there. You allowed this to happen. You created the circumstance. Saying to yourself, yes, I did it. I don't know how much money it was, if it was a lot or it was a costly lesson, but it was a lesson nevertheless. We learn from these experiences. Be grateful for all the difficult situations in life because you can learn something from each one. When you learn to say, I did it, and you accept that fact, then you have dealt with something that's been nagging you for years and years and years. You have finally let go of the banana of the situation, and it doesn't come and nag you all the time. A lot of self-help books and seminars tell you about your problems and your unresolved anxieties. You need to release these things. Release, release, release. But they seldom talk about relinquishing, and that's just as important as releasing. Let's say I have something I cherish very highly, an heirloom that has been handed down from generation to generation, and I'm the last member of the family to have it. Now, suppose I have a friend who's been down in dumps. Her lip is so low she could step on it. I want to lift her spirits. So I say, I'd like to make you happy. This has been in our family for a long time and I want you to have it. So I give it to her, hoping she's happy with it. I've released it from my possession into her possession. Okay, well and good. Sometime later I go shopping downtown and pass by a pawn shop, and right in the window, there's my family heirloom. Darn, that's been in our family a long time. I gave it to her and now it's over here. I'm feeling really hurt. Why? Because I released it, but didn't relinquish it. I still have sentimental attachment to it. On the other hand, if I thought this person needed help, but was too proud to ask for it, and I felt good about making it possible for her to get help, it means that I've released and relinquished. When you release and relinquish, then you're okay. But if you just release, it will keep coming back over and over and over to bug you. Relinquish if you really want to release. He knows the street you live on. Back in Muskogee, Oklahoma, I often visited the Veterans Administration Hospital to talk to the shut-ins, and I was practicing my medicine ways in a different situation. Here were veterans who wore the uniform of our country and exposed their lives to danger so that we can enjoy this thing called freedom. Freedom to move around, freedom to make a living, and, if it be our choice, freedom to be into drugs or alcohol. It's freedom, nevertheless. Those veterans ensured that we have the freedom when they gave us the oath, when they gave the oath to defend our country, even if it meant death. Then they came back, bodies all torn and wrapped, and they were just lying there. On special days when family got together, even Memorial Day, they didn't get as much as a card. These were the people I used to go talk to. I just came by to let you know, comrade, because I was in the service too, that we don't forget about you. And it does not matter if you feel as if no one thinks about you. The one who carried you through all those experiences and allowed you to live today, he knows about you. He cares for you. There's a man named Saul who was a very educated man, spoke several languages, and knew the law. He had an obsession against the Christian people, much like Custer had an obsession against the Indians and Geronimo had an obsession against the whites. Here was this Saul. He was on his way to a place called Damascus because the people congregating there were Christians. While he was on his way, a great light blinded him, and he fell to earth and had an experience of conversion. Saul went on to Damascus, a blind man, and God sent a man named Ananias to go attend to this man Saul, who later became Paul, the great missionary. When God spoke to Ananias, he said, "Go to the street called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judah for a man of Tarsus named Saul." Just a little verse like that tells us the Creator knows on the very street on which we live, the very house in which we live, and the various needs to which we live. Here is this supply, that help for us. He is there to supply that help for us. He knows the very hospital, the very ward, the room, the bed that you abide in. He remembers, he knows, and that's what counts. This patient couldn't speak. He had been shot in the throat, but he spoke to me nevertheless, loud and clear, with his eyes. When he reached out and squeezed my hand, he said a great deal to me. That communication's from a heart to heart, a soul to soul. It's worth more than a whole page, a whole volume of books that could be written. In our Native American way, medicine is not just a bunch of herbs or the training a physician receives. It's helping people attain that which is good in life. If you can point them in a new direction, saying this is the path, this is the way to go, that's a form of healing. When you give a lifting hand and make someone feel better for it, you've given that person medicine.